And one. Hi, I'm Matt Davio. Today I've got a special guest. I've got Greg Kerr. Greg is one of the founders of a potential new ICO. And again, I'm learning the lingo here, Greg, so bear with me. It's called RenuCoin. And we're going to talk about RenuCoin as one of the co-founders, obviously. And I want to talk a little bit about your background, because you mentioned this before we came on air, Greg. Really this transition you've had in your life, and I like the way you put it. You said people, planet, profit, right? This is kind of your driving motivator for who you are and what you want to produce in the future. But let's start from a little bit before that. What did you do? Just so people know, you worked for the NSA out of college, and from there you went to work for the Pentagon. So let you jump off and tell your story, and let everybody kind of hear this transition of where you're from, where you're going, what you expect. That'd be great to hear.
Sure, yeah, thanks. And I appreciate once again for the opportunity to be on your show. I'm calling you today from Washington, D.C. I'm actually in a nice WeWork here
Nice.
in D.C. And yeah, I started off here in the Beltway area as a Marine that was working at Fort Meade, the National Security Agency. And I started off as a cryptological linguist. I spoke Portuguese from some time I spent in Brazil, and Uncle Sam thought it was wise to teach me Spanish. And so that's kind of where I started off in the intelligence community. And along comes 9/11, and I was here in the National Capital Region. The Pentagon got hit. And I was put on this little task force to go into the crash site at the Pentagon and kind of get the information that was, floating around after the attack, and pull that out first before anybody could go in and start picking other things up.
So I've never talked to anybody who was kind of you weren't really a first responder there for the people. You were actually the next layer, I'm guessing, or at the same time sent in to get very important documents, if I'm understanding it.
Yeah, and we didn't make any decisions. It was just literally go in there and actually just pull everything out, like anything on paper. It's not like we were reading it and deciphering. It was just like go in there, pull everything out, and then try to get other things to do. And they gave us a choice, and it's either man a phone with a list of casualties or go in this. And I think I got the easier job.
Yeah, right.
The way I talked to the guys that were on the list on the phone part, and you didn't want to.
Right.
So, but that is kind of obviously 9/11 was a defining moment for a lot of people. It changed a lot of people's lives. But yeah, going from this kind of I was in the Marines, learning, doing Spanish stuff, and then all of a sudden the world goes upside down. And because I was doing kind of low priority things, I got put into a high priority kind of role after that, and ended up being in the invasion of Iraq. Later after 9/11. Kind of was in a small team pushing through during the invasion portion of Iraq. Fast forward, coming back from that, I got out of the military and started working at the Pentagon as a civilian. And I started continuing to go back to Iraq and Afghanistan. And each time I was going back, I started getting deeper and deeper into more kind of working with the people, to the point, there's a famous guy now, General Flynn. He wrote this really passionate paper about trying to make national level intelligence strategically important through kind of understanding things happening on the ground. And he wrote a paper called Fixing Intel. And that created positions that I later took to go down to the front lines and try to be that strategic asset that was looking at things that were really happening. And that got out of the classified realm. When you get down into these conflict zones, it's more about, the economics. It's about tribal and cultural conditions and the human terrain. So I did that. And then my last tour in Afghanistan, I did a role like that, and then went back out with the Navy SEALs. And they had a program where they put little SEAL platoons in villages. And I went down there and lived with the Navy SEAL platoon in an Afghan village for 6 months, and got to write a lot about kind of what was happening in the village, about commerce, and kind of understanding how to work with the people. The goal was to secure and help the people, not necessarily us against them. So, so that's kind of where these seeds started happening. And me and some of those guys from that employment started this company. And we took our first year down to South America and worked in the peace process of Colombia. And as we were down there kind of doing the defense startup thing in Colombia, I got a call from a buddy that I was in Afghanistan with. He was a contractor for a big infrastructure firm. And he goes, "Hey, man, we're fighting Ebola in West Africa and in Liberia. And, could use your help engaging in the bush."
Yeah.
24 hours, he got me 2 contracts that were worth more than I was doing in Colombia. And I said, well, I guess we're going to Africa. And, and then my life got complicated.
Okay.
So Ebola, you're talking about people dying in the streets and whole families being wiped out in front of you. Right. Already difficult situation going even worse because, anybody in any system of merit, left and ran for their lives. Mm-hmm. So, we went through those trials of Ebola, and then we ended up getting a contract with the U.S. Embassy to build a carbon negative power grid that sits 5 hours from a paved road. So
let me stop you. Carbon negative for us non-energy types. What does that mean?
So the energy cycle or the carbon cycle of the grid is carbon negative because it takes biomass, gasifies it, almost like the charcoaling process where you almost burn something. Mm-hmm. So when you almost burn biomass, it creates this energy that you can capture and run a turbine.
Okay.
So basically this village is operating off the waste, their agricultural waste. And so we build this little grid, and this guy from the Huffington Post comes out and does a little TV show on it. It was actually the same guy that took Dennis Rodman to North Korea, if you remember that.
No kidding.
Yeah. He was a Vice News guy. He did that under Vice News, and then he switches over to HuffPo, and he starts doing a show about solutions. Okay. So we were on one of his shows about energy solutions, and he comes out, we take him out to the village, and we show him that we're taking waste and turning it into electricity. Mm-hmm. So in essence, now we have 7 of these grids in Liberia running off waste or solar. 2 of them are with the United States Agency for International Development, and 5 are with another large international NGO. So in doing all this, it's been really difficult. I've picked up every project in West Africa that's defeated another company or several companies. Like one of these grids, we are the 4th contractor. So it's difficult to do business in these areas, and it's difficult to monetize this new technology. So I went back to the West Coast after 2 years in Liberia, and I met up with some partners, and we came up with a scheme to create a cryptocurrency around the conversion of renewable energy.
Okay.
And that's where that RenuCoin is, as you mentioned. We started that, and we've been going through this process of creating a white paper, building a team. We even started our own podcast to try to draw attention to our effort and be transparent.
And the podcast is called?
It's called Crypto Disrupted.
Okay.
So it's with me and my partner, Trent Lipinski, who you've had on this show as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what we're trying to prove and show is as responsible stewards of this charter to reverse climate change and use the blockchain to create economic systems that kind of influence human behavior. One of the criticisms of cryptocurrencies is there's going to be thousands of cryptocurrencies. Yeah. And I say beautiful, because now we're going to be able to measure human interactions better. Right. And once we can measure that kind of commerce, and if we can tie that human interaction to the environment, so use the blockchain as kind of this quantifiable system that puts our behavior to the environment and links it.
So everybody is then Greg, everybody then is held accountable. The validity of the delivery of, in this case, energy, renewable energy, if it's happening, is known because people are financing that. They're benefiting from it. Both, I heard this. What was the word? It was the mix of consumers and providers. So it was prosumers. I don't know if you've heard that word. And I was
like it though.
Yeah, and I was just oh, that's cool, because it's kind of you're marrying the two, people that are trying to profit, but not at the expense of the masses, right? So what you're trying to do is bring energy and power to traditionally starving power, at least on it could be food levels also, but starving energy people that are living in these areas that just don't have access to the things that we take for granted here.
Yeah, they call it energy poverty, and
Yep.
energy impoverished people. And what we've kind of, if you just take that concept that cryptocurrencies can assign value to anything, then you just say, hey, then the conversion of electricity, that's something
Right.
that's attainable. Like I kind of say, if you look at Uber was able to break down a lot of barriers for value creation and business ownership.
Yes.
You have to have access to a state licensing and a vehicle and a
Right.
smart device. So those three
Right.
things, you can be a business owner now. So I feel
Yep.
like we've taken those away, and now all you actually is a smart device, access to a smart device. And if you can create smart contracts that reward waste into energy, then we've now broken down every barrier to value creation and business ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of trying to coin this idea that every Mohammed on the planet can now create value. He and his family for the rest of his life could create value disposing of their waste.
Right.
And
they can also, because of the trans I don't even know if this is really a word, but the transparency, not parents, transfer of money from banking. Now they don't need a bank because they're holding it in a wallet somewhere, and they can also reinvest profits from this operation into an insurance business that is also on the crypto level, where you and I and our locals are then kind of providing the validity of insuring the next driver, or again, because I've talked to people that are looking at that angle.
No,
so
that's true. Go ahead.
So then you're able to reinvest into from the smallest community out to the largest that you can imagine. And to me, that's where my head just kind of goes, bam, it kind of blows up in your people, planet, profit thing, right? We really do shrink the ideas that we're talking about here. We shrink them so greatly that everybody can really, in theory, contribute and benefit.
Yeah, so if you think that leapfrog is okay, we're leapfrogging a majority or half of the humanity into now value creation through something as easy as waste management, proper waste management. So you think of that leapfrogging, but then it really takes another twist when you say people that would never have this opportunity to create value and capture that now can also participate in globally scalable investment systems. And that's what you're saying. Not only are they going to, hey, they can make money by doing things that benefit everybody, but that money is in a system where they can invest in the next village's green energy.
And they can diversify because they know what works and they know how it works, and they can help the village, 100 miles away, and then they can help in the one that's up in northeastern Russia, wherever it may be.
Even better, I estimate that the wallets are probably be smart wallets, and people will basically just have their wallets trade for them. So as Mohammed is using a toilet, the value is being registered in his wallet, which maybe a percentage of it goes to having some kind of AI or machine learning, algorithm that's helping him trade globally.
Truly diversify his portfolio.
Yeah. And that's actually one of those ways that, part of this technology is facilitating the use of algorithms into people that normally have not had an existence aided by algorithms. So you and I have computer algorithms that help us find our way through our GPS or whatever apps, right? Many Africans don't have any algorithms influencing their existence. So as we progress and get more efficient, they're even getting further left behind. But there's nobody really advocating. There aren't many representatives of African community in Silicon Valley to create these tools and apps that benefit them. So that's where I feel like we're kind of, on one hand, we're saying, hey, we're here to help represent the most vulnerable on the planet. But in my head, I'm saying, don't get too nice. Don't think I'm a nice guy. I think that's where the largest profit margins are.
Sure.
So the blockchains allows you to build that selfish system to say, hey, we're going to build these selfish systems that reverse, the polluting nature of poverty. And actually, we're challenging a lot of poverty's characteristics. based on, you know, doing what's right, cleaning the environment, and creating value in doing so.
So I've got to ask you, you know, ex-government guy, you've been employed by them, you know, all the background, you know, your background in government, what you've seen, how fast it can move and how slow it can move, clearly, because you've been involved in a lot of things where it's like, bam, you can move fast if they want to. So all the, you know, the latest leaks and breaches that are out there right now, do you think that blockchain has the possibility to be the future, is the future of government, from voting,
Yeah, and so
from voting down to, you know, employing resources?
Yeah, yesterday on our podcast, we recorded an interview with a guy that's doing, you know, creating a network that's engaging with the U.S. government, actually all governments globally, but he's an American, so he's doing it well with here in D.C. And, you know, they invited me to be on their kind of energy advisory board because, you know, I've been here in DC and I've learned in my past government job that, you know, Congress is actually pretty open to you. If you engage with your senator and your constituent and you say, hey, I'm a veteran small business owner that's in your congressional district, they will meet with you, at least the staffer. And
Yep.
On the Hill, as much as there's a lot of theater, these staffers actually do work together and solve problems across the island.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get audience with them and they'll be open to hear what you're doing, and we're being accepted in those realms, and at least just like kind of opening that talk with government. Now in Africa, I'm working with Africans to kind of explain to them what the blockchain offers, what blockchain governance looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And the pitch I'm kind of putting toward people is to say, if you're the first one to migrate to the blockchain, you'll yield significant political power. Because political power is yielded, there's a simple formula to get political power. It's transparency and responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do those two things, the people will follow you. And whoever jumps on that blockchain first will offer those two things, which means they'll be the perfect landing spot for any international donors. You can say, I'm a political party or I'm an entity working within Africa that can track dollars down to the end user. Then the German public and the Swiss public and the American public should demand that their contributions be tracked on the blockchain.
And okay, I got to stop you because I know I want to talk more about this, but this is such a key point. What people don't understand is that, you know, if you think about your typical American Red Cross, right? They're there when the hurricanes hit and the tidal waves. You know, they go everywhere they can, and where's that money going? And they're one of the better organizations of, you know, really telling us how much of that is going to administration, how much of it is going to the field. And that is what we're talking about here. In this, you know, with the blockchain, I mean, we can tell, like you said, there's no more scrubbing of the books. I mean, this stuff is clear as day transparent. It doesn't get any better than this, right? There's no more bullshit. There's no more lying.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the other thing. It would be easier if there was evil intent. But the Red Cross and the people in it and all those NGOs, they want to do good. And
they
there are
do.
people that are made up that are trying to, but then you start seeing how bureaucracies act, and money starts getting wasted. So this tool would actually, I think, help them and be welcome to help them to understand where their operation and efficiencies are going. Because when you start marrying up like total transparency and documenting a lot of your business functions and start thinking of the ideas of machine learning, I think a lot of organizations are going to move to the blockchain because they're going to, certain are going to do it first and then put in a machine to watch as the blockchain develops within your organization. The machines will start watching, and you become more efficient and you'll execute better than those that don't. So, you know, and to tie into the theme of your show, you know, I think that might be an indicator, say, who's employing blockchain and these kind of performance appraising machines would be somebody I would invest in the future. If Bank A or insurance company A is jumping on the blockchain and putting machines to start observing their corporate activity, then you know they're going to outperform their competitors in 5-10 years.
If not faster, right? That's the whole thing. I mean, I think this is, you know, and again, this is what is intriguing to me is we're not talking about trading currencies here. We're talking about the deeper underlying technology of the blockchain. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the plan is for RenuCoin and how you're going to turn that waste into energy onto the blockchain. Give us an idea of what you're working on with your white paper. Like you said, you can raise money. Anybody can raise money. It's more than the money that you're looking for. So kind of give us a kind of a play-by-play of the hope, the plan, as it sits today. Obviously, it's going to change, but just give us an idea of what that looks like for RenuCoin.
Okay, because absolutely, yeah. So we understand that we're trying to be this change agent, right? And there's some great groups out there doing great things in energy and building energy coins. We feel we're a little bit different. Being Americans, a lot of this has happened overseas outside of the United States. And so bringing that kind of American connectivity and legitimacy that is one aspect. And second, we feel like we're coming up with a bottom-up nature where we are thinking in terms of the vast amount of people that don't have electricity as being the ones that are going to fuel this. Where I feel like a lot of these other groups are kind of looking at and taking the angle of, solar panels in a Western middle income, neighborhood. That's what a lot of these coins are kind of set up to do. We're trying to do it from the bottom up. So in that, we're trying to build our financial network as diversified and that understands the problems that we're about to go up against. And in the crypto space, in the beginning, we're starting to see early adapter investors. And, so you're getting lottery winners, people with, gambling earnings that are just trying to make money in crypto. And we've kind of pushed off on some of those guys because we don't feel like it's kind of enduring to know that, when things start turning difficult in Africa or new technology comes out that we want to adapt, we want to have somebody that's with us that understands that kind of space and adaptability. So,
which means deep pockets and a nimble, which allows for nimbleness, right? We got to scrap that. That was a loss. Move on to the next thing.
And two, yeah. So in one way, yeah, deep pockets are always nice because it allows failure to have less impact. But even a French bank just came up to us last week, took our white paper and our marketing materials, did a murder board on it, and said, address these issues and get back to us. And we're offering you money, but we also want to put an advisor on your board. And I was like, that's kind of a responsible way too, and then, as a team, we're kind of going through, all right, this is a bank, do we want banker money? Do we want to go as would we rather an individual? We have individuals in our network, but, so these are those things that we're going down as a team and we're trying to figure out and set ourselves up for, the best possible outcome. But and in part of that conversation is we're even looking at technologies beyond blockchain. And there's these new things coming out. Holochain is one of them, where they're distributing the hosting and distributing the computing. So we feel like that's another one where if the other coins are putting things on the blockchain, that we feel like we would be the first truly globally scalable energy coin, because we're going with a solution that doesn't require mining and doesn't have a transaction speed of 12 transactions a second. There's some new things coming out. So,
and that's called, you said HoloCoin?
HoloChain is it's one of the companies. IOTA came out and they're using and things like that, where you're distributing the consensus, you're distributing the hosting, you're contributing the computing power itself. So you're cutting out centralized servers in many ways. And then too, we're helping other people create coins as well. It's pretty interesting, kind of side projects that come at us, and kind of showing them how to do hybrid systems where certain functions are on the blockchain, but yet there still is a reason and a way to do a lot of computing on a centralized server and then mix the two. And that's what we're seeing big with games. There's a lot of part of gaming that needs to happen on a centralized server, and then the blockchain can serve certain parts of the game. So until once again, until the chains can handle larger capacity.
Right. So the number, I hear this all the time. The number of you want to play to the largest audiences you can, cast the widest net, but you also don't want something that's literally transacting every couple milliseconds, right? There's this gap still that needs to be filled in by the technology, whereas you can't handle volume of transactions as much as you can the masses of people using it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how people are coming across with solutions. Everything from doing things off chain and then packaging the outcome and result, and then documenting the consensus on that onto the blockchain. You know, creating a bunch of side chains, and yeah. So I like part of this job is, you know, as we've been trying to put a call out for other problem solvers, is people are coming to us with these new technologies, and we get to evaluate them. You know, people want our opinions, and you're like, yeah, sure, send me your white paper. I'll totally hack off on it. I love knowing what's, you know, how people
what people are working on. Yeah. Cool. So, okay, so let's say you find the right partners, you get the money. You know, what kind of money are you talking about that you guys are looking to start with? You know, what's the dollar amount that you're going to open your doors to, then go on the development side and design, you know, from design to development, because white paper is design, then development, and then implementation. So, you know, what are dollars, timelines, and, you know, how do you see this, or what's the goal, and what would be success for you? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're opening the first round at 5 million. That's how we feel we can create the development team, have all the pieces in play, and start doing proofs of concept in these really remote places of Africa. So we challenge, you know, it's be interesting because we want to have Uncle Sam, who's kind of like figuring out about blockchain. We want to put some of their projects without necessarily their permission. You know, they're looking for solutions. They put millions of dollars into these electric grids that are all failing, or being, you know, the power is being generated and given away for free. So they want to kind of like, we offer them a solution where they're not really an authoritative figure, but they are having to deal with the solution itself. So that can be done quickly. As soon as we have, you know, the organization solidified, our developers building more sophisticated tools, and, you know, implementing them in Africa. So 5 million on the first round, implementation in 2018 in some of these test markets. And by the end of it, I would like to, then we're basically just a fund toward these energy projects. So then you're
raising bigger dollars to kind of you know, really
hundreds of millions to just
expand in a large I'm at a loss for word here, but yes.
Yeah, and then it just turns into how many, you know, kilowatt hours of energy we can produce from a renewable source, and then that's what generates value in the economy.
Here's the cool thing again, you know, you kind of saw this, and I got to ask you, do you know much about, like, you know, block in China, like what's going on there? Because I've heard from multiple people that they're so far ahead of us in development and how they're utilizing the whole blockchain. You know, do you see the same thing?
Yeah, so NEO being one that's looking at kind of the Chinese environment and how they're going to have to conform to certain regulations. And then another chain I've come across called Walton Chain, which they've done a lot of work in logistics. And I think that's where we're going to sneak blockchain in, and a lot of proof of concepts when it comes to logistics and tracking merchandise. When you start taking away opportunities of pilfer and start moving things around the planet faster, and the Chinese will start doing that, I think that test case will be really powerful among others. So yeah, I think they're moving in the right direction when it comes to operating supply chain management. And they have a lot of problems with supply chain management. You know, their centralized systems are difficult to navigate. You know, coming from a defense angle, you know, Chinese analysts are kind of saying, man, China just can't move stuff.
That's weird.
You know? Yeah, and you just kind of understand. I can imagine what their state, you know, or the province checkpoints are probably really congested.
So what about, why aren't you meeting with Bezos and Amazon Coin, you know, and having him fund that whole plan? Wow. I mean, I just started thinking about that. Wow.
No, yeah. So we're obviously, you know, trying to get audience with all kinds of different people and putting ourselves out there and showing our work and the projects we're doing. But yeah, the world is big, and it's just not U.S. carriers. And I think, you know, Africa is a good place if we start helping Africans overcome problems that, you know, bigger companies here.
Yeah, because like you said, Greg, it's always been a problem. Like people want to do business there. They're trying to build out this grid, and they're thinking, it's the same old thing. It's like we have these old legacy systems, whether it's banking, whether it's building an electric grid, that phone systems. Think about China. They totally skipped landlines, as did most of the world, except for Europe and the United States. And now everybody's got a handheld, and they've got towers everywhere. So we've totally skipped that. And what do you think we're going to skip? Like, this is the type of thing that I think what you're saying is we've tried, GE's tried for years and years and years to build renewable and all types of energy sources, and have failed miserably in China, in Africa. So you're coming in with this real small little thing and saying, just let us show you, in a couple villages, how this can be transferred one place to another and scaled, right? And doing it quickly, to the point where you're basically eliminating an entire 2 or 3 generations of time.
Oh yeah. And on top of that, there's all kinds of second and third order effects that we can show impact on. One of which is power theft, which is a sport around the world.
Is it really?
Oh man, like these guys that go up there and they tap into the grid and give the people energy are like robbing them. They're modern day Robin Hoods.
Really?
Oh, they steal so much power.
What do they do with it?
So basically, you can sit there, and if you're a poor person, and you can watch only the elite get the limited power that's produced by national grids, and then somebody throw him $20 or something like that, and he goes up there, puts a cheap wire up there, and you see those kind of cat nest or cat ball scenarios you see in the developing world. That's basically just kind of like an ad hoc distribution.
So it's kind of like people used to steal cable in the United States, right? Same thing.
Yeah, good comparison. Yeah. Like nobody turns their guy in. Like he's going to be helped by the people. Nobody's going to say, "Hey."
Crazy. It's so crazy that it's right there. They do that. Wow.
No, yeah. So one of the things is, people are always interested in drones in Africa because they wanted to catch these guys stealing power, and like kind of looking at it. And I was like, okay, I can see that. But what this does with, the idea that the grid being up makes everybody money.
Yes.
Turns it upside down, where if anybody were to go steal the power, they'd be stealing from the community. So it totally flips this up. Like now there's community like consensus or community incentive to keep power grids running and getting their waste processed. And then anybody goes up and steals that.
You don't want to go backwards once you've started that road, right?
Yeah. So this is like one of those things.
Did you see that? I've got to say, people, because I don't think there was enough stories, Iraq 1, 2, Afghan 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you want to say. I don't think there was enough stories of what you were talking about. You were going into villages, really trying to generate goodwill via doing things like this, which was pre-blockchain, but you're trying to create economies, right? From nothing to scale. There's not even a bank there. And if it is, it's run by the government or some warlord who is only in it for the guns and drugs and whatever illicit shit that he can move fast, right? So you had to, this has got to be rooted for you though, in spending time in those types of economies, right? You've been there, you've been to South America, you've been to the Middle East, now Africa. It's got to be so exciting, but so like you've been banging your head probably for
it's refreshing. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I see the blockchain has a role in conflict de-escalation, where it's kind of like everybody empties their pockets and shows their bare hands, and we can start, doing something. There's actually a Howard University here in DC had a professor in the 60s, and he quickly predicted U.S. failure in Vietnam because of cultural errors, or the inability to understand culture. And he has a quote that changed my life when I read it when I was in Afghanistan, really changed my work, where he said, if a government finds itself losing an insurgency, it's being outgoverned, not outfought. And so, if you now start looking at blockchain, going back to your question about blockchain governance, as people can start organizing, solving problems at that lowest level, then I think we're going to start seeing less conflict. You might see less nationalistic identity, where I think we start kind of saying, oh, I'm saving or solving problems and creating governance, at that local level, like maybe city states reemerge as the more relevant level and echelon of governance. And yeah, I do think that like my past and working in these environments has helped that. Like this technology is the best way of organizing human behavior. And what these rural impoverished areas need is more organization. You know, the Afghan people need a government that's organized. We were selling a bad product. It was so difficult to study the Afghan government and then walk into villagers and tell them to believe in a system that I wouldn't believe in. You know, like,
right. No,
you talk to me like, hey, how do you dissolve, you know, if you have a dispute, what do you do? And they would say, oh, I go to the imam, you know, I go to the religious figure, which we called the Taliban. They just knew a religious guy that like solved problems. You know, if you
he was the rabbi, he was the head, you know, the priest, whatever.
Yeah, he took care of that stuff. And you know, if you had to go up to the government, that was 2 days travel because they're distant, they're not accessible, and then you had to bribe your way and make sure you're in the right tribe, you know, and you had the right political connection.
Am I really talking to the right guy? Yeah.
So once again, this was a case where Bernard Foley comes true. He's like, the Afghan government and the U.S. military is being outgoverned by the Taliban and not being outfought. The Taliban could solve problems at the local level, and we can't, or the Afghan government couldn't. Until the blockchain, you know, then maybe we, you know, the blockchain, but it challenges Al Qaeda, challenges, you know, ISIS. They're going to have problems with legitimacy too.
Correct,
you know,
because everybody is held to a different standard of transparency and honesty. You know, again, it's like you'll be rooted out quickly by the mechanism. That's the thing that's fascinating. You fail fast.
I think ISIS proves. I was going to say real quick, ISIS proves that even bad rules are better than no rules. So imagine if you have computer-aided rules. You know, those are better performing than, you know, draconian ISIS rules.
Yeah, and it really,
and
it all comes down then to efficiencies and failing fast, redoing it, fixing it, making it better, stronger, wider cast. And like you said, you start a solution one way and it kind of gets spidered this way, and it kind of, because of the chain, it grows and it gets more solid, no pun on the waist. And, you know, it's, to me, it's just, this rabbit hole is deep. I mean, and you're not I mean, you're a language guy. Are you I've got to ask, are you a coder also? Is that your thing or no?
I'm getting a crash course being business partners with Trent, who's a hacker, and you know, all the white papers that I'm reading, and then of course I have to watch all the TED Talks and everything to keep up on these concepts. But no, I've been able to grab a hold of these concepts, and while I can't physically make them, I think I'm hanging.
I mean, but you're a language guy, so to me, I see it like I'm not a language guy. I barely speak English, so I mean, you could get it. I get it. So that's cool. I mean, you know what, Greg, I'm super jazzed for you and Trent and what you guys are working on. Will you promise me this? I want to keep to the time that I promised you. Would you come on and tell us when you guys are ready to, launch the ICO when you get that all set? Okay,
yes,
that'd be great.
Yeah, that would be an amazing opportunity.
Okay. Well, I am Matt Davio and Greg Kerr. Thanks again for coming on today. Again, Crypto Destructed is yours and Trent's podcast. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. Trent had told me you guys were starting. You guys really got it going quickly. And then RenuCoin, you're one of the co-founders, and I would suggest, again, people, can they find your white paper anywhere? Is it out there publicly or not yet?
No, yeah, RenuCoin.com, and it's RENU, portmanteau, and RenuCoin.com, and yeah, all our marketing materials and white papers and team members are all on the site there. Okay.
Greg, again, appreciate you coming on today. This has been fantastic learning for me, and I hope our listeners reach out to you. Hey, listen, people, this world is shrinking and we're learning fast. And, if you have some questions for Greg, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.